everybody. Thank you for tuning in on another episode of Command Beacon. This is the show for you guys who are listening in for the first time, where I like to invite my friends over and talk about the theory crafting, the deck designing process behind their favorite EDH, their favorite commanders. This is the place where we dissect and delves deep into reasons why they love their commanders so much, and maybe sharing with you guys the tips that they've picked up over the years that they put into perfecting their decks, and talk about what's the driving force, what's the attraction behind playing the deck. And for today's episode, our guest name is Kevin. Kevin, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming onto the show. For those of you who are not familiar with us yet, my name is Jensen, and I'm your humble show host. And I started playing EDH since a very long time ago. Roughly, you can probably tell by the fact that I call Commander EDH back when it was called Elder Dragon Highlander. But that's enough about me. Kevin, give us a quick and simple introduction on yourself.
Sure. Like you said, my name's Kevin. I have been playing Magic since Dragon's Maze. Not the best set to start with. But, that's when we started. A couple friends of mine took me down to a local game shop in the downtown, and we got some packs. I think I got an intro pack, like a dual deck. Something like that. I think it was Golgari versus Izzet.
Yeah, I remember that deck.
Yeah, and
fairly good actually.
Yeah, it became Niv Mizzet became my first ever EDH deck from that, and I was introduced to EDH, and ever since then, that's what I've played, because like everybody in my friend group played EDH. I had a very short run with Standard, where I played Sultai Control, and I had a very short run with Modern, which I played America Control.
Mm-hmm. This is actually very exciting. So, Kevin, for almost as long as I've known you playing Magic, you have always identified as a control player.
Yes. And
that's going to be a unique perspective today, because we're going to be talking about a deck that has no blue in it.
Yes.
So your commander is
Karador the Ghost Chieftain.
For those of you guys at home who doesn't know this card very well, what does it do?
Karador is an 8-mana 3/4 with a text that says Karador Ghost Chieftain costs 1 colorless less for each creature card in your graveyard, and during each of your turns you may cast 1 creature card from your graveyard.
So the objective right off the bat is filling up the graveyard with creature, you're ramping with creature. You are getting value off of the creatures in the yard.
Correct.
And you're taking full advantage of the reanimation offered by Chieftain.
Yes.
And this card, for the most of the years you played, only costs 3 mana.
Correct, yes. Even with Commander tax. That the colorless mana from Commander tax can also be paid through its ability.
Yes.
A good thing for newer Magic players. If they try to make this deck and they think they have to pay the Commander tax on top of it, you technically do, but it all is wrapped up in his first ability, which is everything costs less when the creature is in the graveyard.
Extremely efficient. This kind of ability has only ever occurred on one other card, I believe, and that's the Revi, where it's another way to get over the tax.
Yeah.
I might have missed 1 or 2 coming here, but off the top of my head, those two are very unique.
Yep.
Alright, so this is the episode where we'll be focusing on you and Karador. Let's hear from you, the creator of this deck. For those of you who are interested in the deck list will be down below for you to check it out on Tapped Out, and leave a comment. Tell us what you think. If you have questions for Kevin here, feel free to ask, and we'll do the best to respond back to you as soon as we can. Alright, go ahead and take the wheel and tell us about Karador.
Karador has always been an interesting commander to me. When I first learned about him, a friend in my play group had a really powerful Karador deck for quite some time, and his deck and mine are similar, but at the core they're actually very different. I saw what his deck could do and how many ways you could go with Karador. You could go Reanimator, you could go good stuff, you could go pretty much hard control. So I liked the versatility that that it offered. Most decks, like if you have if it's creature based like Carador is, if you get board wiped or if your important creatures get counterspelled or something like that, it's usually a huge blowout to you.
Sure.
But with this deck, with Carador being out, you can get creatures back without having to sink any extra mana into reanimators or tutoring up a reanimator. There are certainly some of those in the decks, or in the deck, because tutors are good. Extra reanimator is good because I don't want to make an EDH deck that is solely based off of a commander. The commander is supposed to make the deck better, not necessarily be the sole focal point, because if you lose your commander, then the deck falls apart if that's the case most of the time. And I want a deck that can perform on its own if I have no access to the commander.
And the tutors certainly add to the consistency in the performance level.
Correct. Yes. It's also a deck that no matter which instance you go with, like Good Stuff or Control or Reanimator, whatever it is, you can be super casual with it and still be strong, or you can be incredibly competitive and it still be super strong. The casual list and the competitive list, even non-French rules, can still be a lot of fun, and the deck requires a lot of thinking.
Certainly, especially consider the fact that you don't run any counter spells. It's more combo through creatures.
Yep.
Getting things done through different creatures.
Yes. Yep. Precisely. And there's a lot of different combinations. At least in my iteration of the deck, there's a lot of different combinations of cards that can, in a roundabout way, get you to a win or get you to a card that will get you back into the game, because the deck is relatively easy to counter. It's a graveyard deck, which means stuff like Rest in Peace, Identity Crisis, anything that Tormod's Crypt, anything that exiles your graveyard, it can be a huge blow to the deck. And it's a lot of reason why most people don't stick with Carador too terribly often. They have to really, really love what the deck does.
The Carador deck you build has tools to combat those gacha kind of cards.
Yes.
And the meta, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a little bit. Earlier, I have mentioned that, Kevin, you identify yourself as a control player. However, Carador doesn't have blue. What are some of the cards or technology that you have added into this deck that helps you gaining the control edge?
Yeah. Common misconception is that control requires blue. So if you don't run blue, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a control deck. For like cards that you were talking about, for example, like Gaddock Teeg, 2-mana 2/2. Players can't cast X spells and can't cast non-creature spells that cost them 4. So that means like Skyshroud Claim. That means like a lot of different draw spells, a lot of very impactful spells are not able to be played, and it forces people to stick to creatures. Which in EDH, most of the creatures are going to be really high value, but at the same time, there are going to be a lot of high value spells to get there. Like this guy will shut down like early ramp. Same with Thalia, the 2-mana Thalia, not the new one. Playing this guy on turn 2, forcing ramp players to pay 1 extra mana for each of their ramp spells can slow a deck down significantly. I've played games against like your Wanderer deck where it's explosive and there's a lot of ramp, but if I can get a Thalia down super early, it's shut the deck down before. It doesn't always, but when decks rely on that strategy of super early like card advantage or super early aggression with like ramp and stuff like that, it just shuts it down completely.
Absolutely. And what other cards do you have that adds onto the control package?
Probably the biggest one is going to be Yosei, the Morningstar. 6-mana 5/5 flying. When it dies, target players, you tap 5 permanents target player controls, and that player skips their own tap step.
And this card not only acts as a tool for control, it also acts as a win condition.
Right. Because there are multiple ways in the deck that you can just recur it. Like you have a sack outlet of any kind, even from a land, which there are a couple in here. You just Carador or play Yosei, sack it, pass turn. Comes back to you, they can't do anything, you just replay it with Carador, sack it, pass turn. Like, they're locked, they can't, it'll take a lot to do anything.
Especially in a 1v1, sometimes they are completely automated.
Yeah.
I really like that. Now, in a normal game of, say, multiplayer, or let's focus on 1v1 aspect of Commander for a little bit. What are the phases that you will be going through since the game began? Like, what I mean by that is, there is the early control phase, right? Whether you lay down a Gaddock Teeg or you are playing something else along the line of extending control, or maybe filling in your graveyard with tutors and things like that. And then there is probably a phase in the middle, a short, maybe 4 or 5 turns of combating against different combos or kind of slowing them down, and then there comes the phase of just winning the game, right? Because the way you set up this deck, it performs consistently and it performs very smoothly. So the phases, to you, in execution, which part of the phases is most important, and why would you think that?
I think the early game is going to be incredibly important. The deck only runs 31 lands, and the reason for that is I have 3 or 4 mana dorks in the deck, and also any card that goes into my graveyard is considered ramp 2 because it makes Carador cheaper. So getting lands early is good, but getting these the early control stuff like Gaddock Teeg and Thalia is important because the deck needs time to set up.
Right.
There are times where I can get a turn 2 win. I've done that before. But
what is the turn 2 win? Walk us through real quick.
There are a couple. Some of them are dependent. You can Iona somebody on turn 2. You can choose not to play a land after you draw, and then you have to discard a card, and then you can play a swamp, reanimate Iona.
Sure.
And
taking advantage of the graveyard play.
Yep.
Absolutely. Now, real quick, for those of you guys who missed yesterday's bonus episode, it's actually an episode where I talk about the commander deck that I've been playing for years, and in that video, I specifically talk about the land base and why it is so important to refine our land base. Every little thing you do extra is every little thing you are gaining as part of your edge. That's the focus on yesterday's podcast. Now, since we're on the topic of the 31 lands in Carador and how unique Carador is in terms of mana ramp and everything, let's break down the mana base real quick for our audience. How many basic lands are you running in the 31 lands deck?
One of each.
One of each.
Yep.
And that means specifically there are only 3 basic lands.
Correct.
And why is it set up like that?
Mainly because in competitive, Blood Moon is a card, and with at least 3 mana, I can play my Carador, because the 5 mana or however much is going to be covered by the time usually they get a Blood Moon, and then the rest of most of my spells I can either pay with like Phyrexian Tower, which gives me multiple mana, or just use the 3 that I have to be able to cast it. The idea is I need at least one of everything so I can cast my general and try and mount a comeback.
Certainly. So the dual decks, the dual lands helps with the mana fixing a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm also aware there is a powerhouse in the deck that really allows you to take advantage of the fact that you're running so few basic lands.
Yeah. Powerhouse would be Hermit Druid.
Right. And for those of you who are not familiar with the card, what does it do?
Hermit Druid is a 2-mana 1/1. It's a colorless and a green that says you tap this creature and you reveal the top cards of your deck until you hit a basic land, and you put that basic land into your hand, and the rest of the cards go into your graveyard.
Absolutely. And I've been on the receiving end of this card at a very early game of maybe turn 2 or turn 3 activation that netted you probably around 40 cards in your graveyard. At that point, sometimes if I miss one step or a single turn, it gets out of control really fast, and it is hard to come back without a graveyard removal or a shuffle effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, let's move forward. We talked about the land base, how advanced it is, and how to take advantage of your land base in this particular deck. Once again, guys, the deck list will be down below the video if you're interested in checking out. Now that we talked about the mana system, we talked about how Carador works. Please elaborate on your win condition. We have already talked about Yusei, but we are now in a phase where setup and everything is done. The mid game is over. You're going in for a kill. You have lots of creatures in your graveyard. Your decks maybe have 40 cards left at this point. What do you do to close out the game?
There's multiple ways of doing it, actually. One of my favorite ways to go would be to destroy all permanents that is on the battlefield. You can Karmic Guide, Revel Arc, and Acidic Slime Loop. with a sack outlet, of course. Because when acidic slime comes into play, you can gat a land, or you can gat an artifact and completely take them out of the game. But doing it
through recursion,
Yep,
cycles of recursion, you will blow up the lands every time.
Yep. And then if there are anything that needs to be exiled, I have Ashen Rider in the deck, which is whenever it enters the battlefield and dies, you exile target permanent, which is also something that I can recur like consistently over a turn.
It's not then, right? If I remember right, it's 2 separate trigger. When it enters the battlefield, you exile, and
Yep.
when it dies, you exile.
Then you exile.
Oh,
right,
sure.
yep. Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of value.
Yeah, a lot of value. Because you can, there's just so much you can do. Safi Eric's Daughter is a huge way to bring back creatures that will get you the more creatures. It's relatively combo heavy to get the control. The one of the more consistent ways is Boomweaver Giant. It's a 7 mana. I can't remember the power, but when it comes into play, you search your deck or your I think it's just your deck for an enchantment. And you put it into play, and I look for a Pattern of Rebirth, which says, and you enchant it to a creature, and it says when this creature dies, when an enchanted creature dies, search your deck for a creature and put that creature into play. So basically, what this allows me to do through relatively convoluted, but what it lets me do is I can either tutor up very specific creatures to wipe a board, or I can put all of my creatures onto the battlefield, just basically flip my deck.
Mm-hmm.
With this like 4 or 5 card combo.
And with that much power, usually it's no problem.
Yeah, it's no like Karmic Guide is probably like the unsung hero, and Revelark are probably the unsung heroes of the deck. Loyal Retainers is good, Hermit Druid is good, but these are like the guys that are super heavy with the Reanimator, the recursion that lets me get really expensive creatures like Elesh Norn, like Sheoldred, like Vorinclex, Yosei, stuff like that.
I think that will be the topic or the theme for today's episode is identify the bombs in your deck and take full advantage of them. Knowing what your threats are and knowing how to point them at the right direction against the right decks at the right time is extremely important, and also will improve your overall winning efficiency more than anything else. We all have powerful tools in our decks, and learning the best scenario to activate them is super important. And Kevin did a great job there explaining a plethora of different threats that he can put out. If one gets shut down, he inevitably have many options to close the game.
Yeah.
On a very short clock, right? Now, I think that covers the deck pretty well. Can you give us a quick breakdown of different type of cards you run in the deck? You all have already gone through that. You're running 31 lands.
Yep, so I'm running 31 lands, 51 creatures, 7 sorceries, 1 instant, 3 artifacts, 6 enchantments, and one of the creatures I have is the Flip Liliana, so I have a Planeswalker in there too.
That card does a lot of work.
Yeah. Typically with a Carador deck, at least in my opinion, you want as few non-creature spells as possible. That includes Planeswalkers. There are a lot of powerful Planeswalkers, like 3-drop Lily, or like Lily on the Veil is super good. There's a lot of really good creatures, Planeswalkers, but because they're not creatures, you cannot recur them consistently.
Right.
Which the main theme of the deck is to control and outvalue your opponent by sticking out through all the board wipes, all the counter spells, and still having a constant army that just keeps coming back and you keep getting a lot of value from.
And the aim here is to kind of oil this deck just right so that every time you play, your experience is as smooth as possible, never clunky.
Yes.
I like that. Let's briefly talk about, give us a verdict, so to speak. Now, you have played lots of blue control deck, and let's say that Carador is a control/combo deck. For the viewers out there, what are your thoughts in just kind of compare 2 different types of control? And obviously, you have chosen to stick around with Carador for so long. What about Carador, other than the consistency? What about the Carador's control edge really gets to you?
The ability to consistently bring back those control threats. Like in a blue control deck, if you have an empty hand, like the main thing of your deck is counter your opponent's spells until you can play your good spells.
You're grinding them down slowly, but at the same time, you're losing a lot
Right.
of cards.
They're losing card advantage, which in most control decks you account for that. You'll put in like a Consecrated Sphinx, so you put in some draw power. But if you don't draw them and you have an empty hand, the deck kind of bricks. Whereas this deck, by no means is it like exempt from bricking. The deck can brick. It's variance. It's magic. There's going to be times where it's just not going to work.
Times,
yeah. But if one of my creatures gets countered, or I get board wiped or something, my general will cost me 3 mana. I can play him again, play my threat again. They have to deal with it again. I play my threat again. They have to deal with it again. Mm-hmm. And
when you are grinding down your opponents, you are not missing out on any of them.
Correct. And in this deck, dredging is drawing cards. Like if you're making a deck like this and you say, like, I really don't have a lot of card draw, I feel like I'm not getting a lot of cards in my hand, you have to also realize that your graveyard is your hand, is an extension of your hand. So every dredge mechanic you have is drawing cards. Like Hermit Druid, tap, draw 40 cards, 30 cards, even 10 cards is insane.
Seems pretty good.
2 mana, draw 10.
In Wonder, I had to pay 4 life for every extra card I draw, and I can only draw up to 3 cards. So in comparison, Hermit Druid seems okay. Seems like a decent inclusion for decks like this.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. That is very, very exciting. If there are cards in recent memory good enough to go into Carador, let's just say pick 1 cards. Are there any cards from recent set that you would like to test out, given the chance? Or even including Kaladesh, for example?
For recent, that would be a good question. When it comes to this deck, I'm incredibly picky. Like, there are super good cards that I had in this deck that I cut from them because they weren't good enough.
For the same reason that it might cause the deck to be a little bit more clunky.
Right, like Birthing Pod, for example. Like, it's super cool to play Birthing Pod turn 3, Carador turn 4, Birthing Pod away the Carador to get an Iona.
Yeah.
That's super strong, but it's too slow. Right.
And you can't recur Birthing Pod reliably. That's another really good lesson for maybe newer players, is that sometimes you see a very powerful card out there, but the powerful card may not be the best furniture for the home you are trying to build.
Right.
So really kind of try to look at powerful things from different perspectives and see how well they fit into the deck.
Yes.
All right, I really like that. Everything you've said about Carador so far, especially your perspective on the different type of control this deck can offer. If there are any final verdict or any kind of tips, master tips, of course, that you would like to give all the Carador or / graveyard commander players out there, what would be some of the things that you want to offer?
One of the main important ones I've actually already gone over is just to not make the deck centered around a commander. Carador is super good for the Reanimator and the control, because what I want to do with the deck, but the deck does not need Carador to be able to do that. There are plenty of tools in here that can do what he does. It may not be as effective or as efficient, but it works if he gets tucked, or if I don't have access to him, like somebody mind controls him or something like that. With this deck, if you're going to play this deck, don't worry necessarily, at least in my opinion, worry about putting cards in that takes cards from exile. You're going to get a lot of hate when it comes to your graveyard, and slotting in cards that bring cards back from exile is actually a waste of a slot. It might think you're getting certain power cards that you lost because somebody exiled your graveyard or something like that, but it's actually hindering you, because would you rather draw like an Elesh Norn, or would you rather draw like Peel from Meow, or anything that
instead of drawing a card that may fetch you the answer, you want to draw it into the actual answer.
Yeah, like it's better to have your deck to be full of threats and answers than to try and recover, because this deck can still recover. I've played games where I've had my graveyard exiled twice, my hand exiled 3 times, and I've still won the game.
You still won the game,
because I had enough threats to where they could not get rid of all of them, and I won with 2 cards in my lap.
Absolutely, and that's a great feeling to go all in a game.
Yeah,
very, very, very. Well, thank you again for coming onto the show today, Kevin, and share all of your master tips on Carador / the different kind of control strategy.
was fun.
For those of you, once again, if you have any question for Kevin or me here, feel free to leave a comment down below. We'll do the best to getting back to you as soon as possible. And the deck list will also be there for you to check it out. If you like the content, please smash that like button and hit that subscribe button so that you can stay in touch with us as the future content gets released. In the meantime, keep on exploring, guys.